Greetings and welcome to the Pure Report. I'm your host, Rob Ludeman, and it is time to bring the orange. And we got a pair of fine gentlemen in the studio today, both from our principal technologist team. Thrilled to have you, Michael Sass, Matthew Bednar. Welcome, welcome, gentlemen. It's good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, you did that at the same time. Nice pod. Way to go. You passed the first thing. No, it's super awesome. And I'm really thrilled to cover this topic. It was proposed by both of you. It's one that I think is growing in popularity right now. Data and observability. Huge. So we will dive in. Before that, let's get to know you guys. Sass, I'm going to hit you first.
Okay.
Over a decade here at Pure.
Yeah.
And how'd you get started here? How'd you jump into the rocket ship here?
A good friend of mine, another SE in Minneapolis, got me to come over. I was actively looking at different places. I'd worked at a partner on the partner side for a number of years. And I said, no, I want to try the vendor side now.
Yeah.
And I was originally looking at virtualization options and stuff like that. And then a good friend of mine was like, why not Pure? I said, yeah, why not Pure? Why am I not thinking of Pure? And boom. Came on board here.
We took the leap kind of early too, right? As part of the 10-year club.
Yeah.
At Pure, you saw the light maybe earlier than others did, just that there was something here that looked really interesting.
Yeah.
To dive into.
Yeah, it definitely did. Well, at the time, I mean, Flash, there was tons of Flash players out there.
Yeah.
But the simplicity was the thing that really drew me in. I'm like, this should be crazy easy. Just give me some Flash that's doing data reduction. I don't have to tune anything. Boom, good to go.
Well, and coming from the partner side too, you probably saw that because partners just want a really simple value prop and a really simple message. And so if you're on the partner side, you're like, oh, I can go represent this Pure stuff that has some really core strengths relative to what we can solve.
Yeah, and then try to do some sort of advanced services that we could sell on top of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You started out and you both did, which is really interesting, right? And I see this common thread with a lot of people on your team.
Yeah.
You guys were practitioners, right? You were hands-on types of folks. What was your experience like getting started as a wrencher?
I was, at first I was a Linux guy. I'm like, Windows is stupid. Linux is where I want to be in that command line, right?
That's good. 100%.
Yeah. And then in like 2006, I saw my first vMotion. I'm like, forget Linux.
Ooh, there you go.
I'm all in on VMware.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was a VMware admin for a long time and did a lot of that before getting into the partner side.
Yeah, that's a good path. It's a good path to it. Same with you, Mr. Bednar. 6.5 years here at Pure, which is also a very good chunk of time. Started as a systems engineer and then kind of made your way onto the team now where you guys help everybody around every different topic. What was your see the light about Pure moment?
Mine definitely came from the customer side.
Yeah.
Right. I was a hardcore system admin, right? Did the enterprise admin thing and moved up from there. Did a lot in the virtualization space, right? Early P2V virtualization, took companies to 100% virtualized, and touched a lot of the major technologies in data center, right? At one point in time, I was running storage infrastructure as well as the rest of the IT infrastructure. And when I brought Pure in, it was honestly to simplify my world. I needed something that was a rock solid platform that would just do what it was supposed to do. And that was my entry point into Pure. The first technology I think I ever adopted on the customer side that actually just did what it was supposed to do. And that was it. I was hooked. I wanted to be part of the orange. So,
do you recall what kind of pain you had with the prior storage that you were using before Pure? Like what were the top 3 things that you recall that drove you crazy? I'm off the cuffing it with you.
Yeah, no worries. So I think the top 3 things were probably consistency and performance.
Okay.
Right. I was coming off of heavily flashed, tiered
hybrid,
like a hybrid system.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you get just kind of all kinds of performance variability.
Those latency spikes that you can see when you're monitoring.
100%. And I was coming out of healthcare, and you don't want to piss off lawyers and you don't want to piss off doctors.
Yeah. They're
right?
like, where's my patient at? Right.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, like time doesn't just mean money. Time means life or death.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So having that consistency and performance was huge. And the other thing that really sold me on it, honestly, was our snapshot technology.
Okay.
We had EMRs that you literally were so large, you couldn't successfully back them up within a 24-hour window. So we were doing differentials and incrementals, and you're just extending that recovery time beyond reason
Yeah, but
at that
isn't
point.
managing differentials and incremental pain in the butt too,
Yeah,
right?
and
Just like you have all these different fractions of copies, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So very messy. We were able to greatly simplify, and we took recovery times down, obviously, to minutes, right, versus days or months, depending on where you were coming from.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
100%.
Right? That is. And as a
Making
practitioner.
the world better.
Sas, what's your favorite thing when you came into, like, what's the feature that I kind of like to ask it this way?
Mhm.
Well, you're up talking, right? Somebody asks you a question, like, well, what about this thing with Pure? What's the thing that makes you smile when you get to talk to customers about it?
Like today or
Yeah,
from the beginning?
today or from the beginning. I be one or the other.
At the beginning, it was, the snapshots was a big thing
Yeah.
because that was something coming from my legacy world, having done other storage products in the past. There was a lot more to consider, like especially performance, if you were going to use snaps and stuff like that. Today, I love talking about Fusion,
Oh yeah.
telling customers, everybody's got some sort of automation story or journey that they want to go down. And then it's like, well, hey, what if we could just make that easier? Give you a platform that can help you build some of those things, but also a platform that's not going to be constantly changing under your feet while you tried to build automation on top of it. So I talk a lot about Fusion today, and that's probably the favorite thing I talk about now.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's great. And they're starting to grok it. Customers are starting to kind of figure out,
They're starting to get it.
what
Yeah.
can do. Because there is that thing with IT folks where they're like, whoa, you're taking away my ability to add value by doing mundane tasks.
Right.
By automating. It's like, no, we're making you strategists, right? You're looking at what your business needs, and then you have the ability to go and automate. And by the way, we do all these things under the cover that optimize, data placement and whatever, presets that you put in.
Right.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah. There's the saying, you'll never automate yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's not possible.
No,
They just give you different work.
no. I mean, we still have umpires in baseball. They haven't found a way. As a totally unrelated technology person point thing, we have those replays that are coming in, and we have maybe the strikes and balls, but we still have people back there. They're not automating that out of a job. That's awesome. Thanks for talking a little bit about portfolio and doing some Wayback Machine on where you came from, because I love that. It establishes credibility, and of course, want to make sure that people watching and listening know you guys are very representative of the PT team, the principal technologist team, that are available, right, to go in and advise client prospects, partners, just on some of these really tricky, technical issues, but also to evangelize the cool stuff that we're doing. So, thank you for that. All right, I'm going to do an abrupt pivot to observability because I don't have a really good segue at the tip of my tongue right now. Although, okay, maybe related to usually things.
Segue.
Yes, observability. This does not need a segue. But Bender, I'll start with you.
Sure.
Why? So define it for people, but then also, why are we talking about? Why does it matter? And I'll have you follow up kind of on that one, Sas.
Yeah, awesome. So when we think about observability, we're talking about how do we get the intelligence and information that we need out of systems within an IT architecture that allow us to have the visibility and the lineage of what's going on within those systems,
I like that.
to be able to troubleshoot or to be able to identify what's going on within highly complex IT architectures, right? You think historically these systems that we're defining, that we're building, could be application platforms, could be some kind of service infrastructure. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Things are getting more and more complex as we move forward in time. So having that centralized single point of truth, having the ability to identify what's going on in these highly complex systems is what observability is really all about.
Mm-hmm.
Which I would follow with, why are we talking about it more now? Like you and I were talking in the hallway before this, just, it's kind of always been a thing, right? You've been able to capture machine data from systems, right? You can go back to, I'm an old school guy, so my mind goes back to like mainframes, right? You'd like see what was going on there. But Sas, why now is it coming to the forefront? Is it just the matter of that there's just so much data now, but also the ability to manipulate it and do more things?
There's no
With it?
bad. I think part of it is that businesses are starting to understand that what I need out of observability is a place where I can take all the metrics of the different things that make up the applications, the environment, and then I need to correlate that to the actual business value, the things that we care about as a business,
Right.
and trying to determine how I can leverage that information to make outcome-based decisions. So I worked at a payment system years ago. One of the things that we actually tracked was how long did it take for people to actually go in and apply for a loan on our website. The longer it took, the less likely that customer was to stick
They were
around.
going to drop off. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like an early observability thing where,
Okay.
you don't just look at like a latency graph on a storage array or the CPU utilization on a web server. That's the outcome that we would measure. And by measuring that outcome, we could determine then if we needed to go back and fix something in the infrastructure.
Okay. So you're taking the data and the information, but then the key is you're making that connection to whatever the business process or workflow or outcome needs to be. And that maybe is the distinction, because I feel like we've been capturing data from systems forever and ever, right? It's just data's there, but it's more the realization or the ability to actually make that connection to something that matters.
Yeah.
Did you have that with
And to
with healthcare too when you were
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Tons of that. Click time was huge for us, right? If
Yeah.
I click on a record, how long until that record opens? What's the delay that's acceptable versus not acceptable? And again, these are minor things that we're talking about when we're talking about past experience, at least I feel like. This has really exploded, right? So think about where we're at today from something as complex as like a hybrid cloud architecture. I've got applications and platforms that are running in the cloud. I have applications and platforms that are running in my data center. And a lot of times, to get the outcome that I want as a business, there's going to be pathways, there's going to be streams that traverse that entire topology. How do I know when one of those pathways breaks?
right?
How do I know where my bottleneck is? How do I know how to improve customer experience if I can't track and identify what's going on within my data sets? So again, complexity breeds requirements around understanding what's going on within that highly complex architecture.
It all sounds very complicated though,
Right.
because you have all the different data sets and you also have different users with different careabouts.
Yeah.
Right. Things that they care about. And so I think really what I see as complicated is how do you create that view where you can see what you need to see when you need to see it. Kind of my rudimentary brain goes back to when we used to spend a lot of time looking at AWS reports with customers for Oracle database. Like that is one type of observability thing that we did. But also you almost needed a special interpreter to look at and understand, right? Because as you made the point before about just getting the data back, it's like, okay, cool. I see graphs and charts and things. What does it actually mean?
Well, yeah.
And that's complicated.
How do you make it relevant?
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, there's a infinite amount of data out there you
Yeah.
can go grab,
Yeah.
right? But until you actually talk to the stakeholders in the business, the people that actually use the applications, what matters to them, can you actually formulate useful data and useful things that you can actually use to try to change the way that you do business to improve margins or speed the revenue, whatever it might be, right? If you don't have that correlation to the person that actually cares, it's just useless data.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. I'm glad I invited you guys in. This is a really interesting conversation. I hope everybody watching thinks that as well. I'm going to hit our stat of the episode on observability. And I don't remember what I found on the internets, but a recent vendor, I'll use air quotes for the people that are listening, not watching. 70% of teams rely on 4 or more observability technologies, which, the note also said underscores the fragmentation around this. So we're kind of heading towards like, how do you centralize everything? And that's a challenge, right? And I guess we see the same thing with monitoring tools. And I remember when we got the integration with FlashStack, with Intersight pulling in, pull Pure One, like that was huge because we're minimizing the amount of screens. Is this something that, and Ben, I'll hit you first. When you work with customers, do you see the same proliferation? Like there's tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Tools.
I think a lot of what we're seeing right now too goes back to the number of teams, right? If I have a cloud team, if I have a data center team, if I have application teams, they could all be using different observability.
You mean they don't
tools.
talk to one another?
No,
right.
Collaborate?
Who knew?
Never heard that before.
And then you bring in your security team, and they're probably using something along the lines of Splunk or some other
Yeah.
log aggregation platform to try to identify threats. And it's just data, and more data, but it gets siloed. It gets stockpiled in all these different locations within the business. And that fragmentation is really honestly something that I think a lot of the market's really looking to address right now. How do we kind of get a more centralized view of the world? How do we adopt standardization within something that has been, I don't want to use the term Wild West because I feel like that's overused, but I think that's a good way to describe it, right? All these teams that are doing their own version of this, and how do we kind of bring it back underneath the umbrella, if
Yeah.
you will?
Yeah, because you got a lot of problems when it comes to observability and why there's so many different tools, and that's that every different endpoint might have a different way of getting data.
Yeah.
So now you might have like specialized tools or different command lines, or like for us, everything's REST API. So, but everything could be different. So you might have to buy product number 1 to talk to these different endpoints, and then product number 2 to different ones. And then you've also got products that are like, well, security focused, or maybe storage focused, or business focused. And they're all going to have different outcomes. Maybe they were built to try to derive. And that's where you end up with this giant proliferation, because it's just, there's so many different ways of collecting the data, so many different things that you might want to know from the data. And before you know it, you've got like just like a paint easel, like full of different things that you like to pick from. So
Yeah. Must drive the IT and procurement leaders crazy, right? To see
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure they
all
love
the
it.
different, I mean, we have our own kind of, fun challenges with business applications around this company that we've
yeah,
wrangled in the last, 3 or 4 years, which has
Mhm.
been great. But even coming from the marketing side of the house, I mean, it was 2 or 3 years ago when they pulled a bunch of us just together and said, "Well, you want to see a list of the MarTech tools that you guys are all," again, aside from observability, but just
Sure.
there is a proliferation of technology when different teams go, "Oh, that's a cool solution. That's a cool solution." Then you end up with all these different widgets that you're using, and there's nothing cohesive. And that's where we are really here with the observability side of the story.
Sure.
So let's bring it down to the storage side of the
Yeah.
house. What of our storage customers traditionally used or done in this space? Like what is their common approach? And I'm going to avoid like the use of single pane of glass because I hate when that gets used over time, but that always seems like the nirvana that different organizations propose. It's like, oh, we got single pane of glass and do everything. But what are our storage customers doing with observability?
So I think there's a lot of things that are kind of percolating right now. First off, I think we have to mention the fact that Pure One has been out for as long as Pure's
Long
been a
time.
company,
Yeah.
Right.
basically,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So you've got this kind of built-in observability-esque platform for Pure products. It's cloud-based.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And if you think about the speed of business, if you think about the direction the business is going, that technology is moving, there are points in time where having the um we'll call it the nice pane of glass in Pure One, has some time issues with it, right? How long does it take for me to feed the raw metrics into Pure One? What's my time from impact that Pure One's going to be able to provide to me? So fantastic tool.
Yeah.
Amazing product delivered to you basically as a service from Pure. No need to do any kind of heavy lifting. But in the future state, when we think about performance, when we think about speed to analysis, are we keeping up?
Yeah.
And the only way I think to make things better is to get things closer to the action point, to get things closer to the systems that are producing
The data right into the source.
Right.
Basically.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a difference between seeing what has happened and what is happening.
Correct. And more when I'm talking with customers, their appetite is as close to real time as possible.
Okay.
So what's being actioned on, what's being implemented is very much how do I get my observability closer to the action point, right? Closer to the creation point. That's where I'm seeing it.
Yeah. And what are they using? Right. I mean, it's been,
Oh,
on Well, there's
Some of the shiny you have.
there's a shift. I know. Well, no, we talked to there's kind of a trend going on, and it's interesting that whichever one of you way up front, I'm already forgetting, mentioned Linux.
Mm.
It is always kind of interesting how open sourcey things
Oh, for sure.
tend to come out of the woodwork to solve challenges because they are nimble, flexible, and easy to use. Right.
Absolutely. And there's a difference too, I think, between major players from an observability platform perspective. We're talking Splunk, we're talking Logic Monitor, we're talking Datadog,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's the open source or the niche or the off the cloud edge is what I want to call it
Yeah.
stuff, right? Tools that were built to be cloud native that were brought to the fore with things like containerization, et cetera, that have really made their way, I think, into the enterprise. And you get a lot of shadow IT, like going back to that whole per application observability platform thing, right? Like, I need a server. Okay, cool. Here's your server. And then you deploy an open source observability platform on it. IT doesn't know about that. Like,
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I think there's a general trend towards we need more observability. How are we going to do that? And there's companies that are standardizing on major players. And then there are also companies that are pursuing a more open source or cloud centric approach to it.
I think, could we invent our own term on this podcast?
No, wait, that's what this podcast.
Shadow observability.
Shadow See, I love it. All right, it's just one layer down from Shadow or Shadow Cloud Services, right? Yeah, Shadow Observability. I like it. No, but it's there, right? If every tool has its own, and like you said, with the acquisition of the server, it's like, oh, we'll just deploy our own thing on there, and it's one more tool that gets added into the mix.
Just right tool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think going back to what we talked about before too, is that now suddenly, if you do have all these different observability platforms, there's no context in between all of them. So maybe you do have like
Right.
DBAs are tracking a specific thing in their observability platform, and they're looking at things that matter to them. Storage teams might be looking at something different, infrastructure, security, whatever it might be. And you might have somebody over here making a decision based on their observability platform that matters to them that negatively affects other people.
Yeah.
And then they see in their observability platform, right, that like, wait, what the heck's going on? It's like, oh, I just changed this setting somewhere or something like that.
Who's the persona that owns this then, right? As I'm hearing all this, you got different groups, but all of them tend to funnel up to IT unless you're in a line of business, right? Is there some persona or some role that should be taking a holistic view across these and trying to consolidate or trying to, build a strategy? Because what I'm hearing is there's not really, doesn't sound like most places have a strategy for this. They're just doing things. Or is it getting better?
Plenty are.
Is it getting better?
I think there are plenty of customers that are literally just doing things, or
Yeah.
we're collecting
Yeah.
what we need to do our job, right? Again, going back to that whole application owner, if I know I need these specific metrics, I'm going to deploy software or some other system that lets me capture that. The direction I think that every business should be looking or is potentially looking is, how do we centralize this? How do we get this down to a single point of truth that all of the different teams are coming into the same resource set, the same tool, if you will, in order to pull data out for their specific needs? Again, going back to the concept of this dashboard meets my needs. This set of data is what I need to be successful within the business. Anthony Nocentino actually wrote a blog around this exact topic. He was able to show how leveraging our current metrics model, our open metrics model, infused with observability metrics from SQL Server, can be correlated and shown in the same graph. So that solves that problem. Well, I have an app team that's paying attention only to their world, and I have an infrastructure team that's paying only attention to their world. We can merge those two together, and we get a much broader picture of the environment. And it's also easier to understand why things are happening the way that they are.
Or maybe to learn what other groups are doing, because you get some exposure to, right? Because there is that notion of that siloed behavior that you talked about before. If you only care about what your area is doing, but you're only able to access information or insights on that, really know what the other groups are. And I think
Right.
that's the one common thread we have, is that IT works better together when everybody knows, what the left hand and the right hand are doing across the different areas.
And I think too, from the top down as well, within the IT organization, having like CIOs, VPs, things like that, the folks that are actually like the ambassadors to IT to the rest of the business, saying that we can build some really great things here that need to be, one, it has to be a complete system that looks at everything. And then
Yeah.
two, help us understand how all of these things that we're measuring directly correlate to the business outcomes that you all care about. So we will have actionable data and we can give you better outcomes.
And probably be better business partners too. Again, common thread that I've hit on the pod for years is when IT knows more about what the business or line of business wants, and the line of business actually knows what IT is capable of doing, everything tends to run a little bit better.
Mhm.
And that
Absolutely.
sounds exactly like what it is. What else do we do, SaaS, really well in Pure One today? We kind of hit on, that capability that, Bednar, you said has always been there. And I was amazed when I came into Pure in 2017 and they were like, "Oh yeah, check out this, this monitoring, monitoring and management type of thing. Oh, by the way, you can use your phone." It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, really? What?" And I pulled it up on my phone. And it's like, "Oh, this is really cool. This is an array running." But
Mm-hmm.
Pure One has evolved since then, right? That digital experience team has added so many capabilities, and the benefit is that we get all that telemetry data that we can do stuff. But what are cool things that you love to show or talk about that can be done within our own platform?
Yeah. I mean, one that I love showing people is the VMware Analytics tool.
It's a great tool.
Just
Yeah.
being able to see that end-to-end data of going back to when I was a VMware admin, someone comes to me and is like, XYZ is slow.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Okay. I'll go get ESX top logs, and then I'll go get logs from the storage array.
Yeah.
I need to look at the fiber channel switches in between, and on and on and on. And now it's like, I just go into VMware Analytics and it's like, oh, okay. So there's the VMDKs, there's the VM, there's the data store, and on, all the way up to the storage array. It's like, now I got it all in one place. So now I can just see everything right here and go, oh yeah, you know what? That host, that's where the latency jumped up, So you've got that kind of contextual information now in one place. So you can actually make some really great data-driven decisions on the VMware world. The other thing I love is Matt talked about all the data and telemetry that's coming in. And Pure One has its own APIs
Yeah.
that people don't use.
Right.
Very true.
Like the one big thing
Use
is
them.
they're there, just use them.
Right.
And I love the fact that the audit trail of every single array is kept up in Pure One in a read-only format, so that if you maybe wanted to take a look back in time, like maybe if there was a bad actor that got into the environment, well, I can go back and look at the audit trail of every single array across the entire fleet of products that I have and look for every single action taken in the GUI, CLI, APIs, whatever it might be, and go, right there, that's where the bad actor did something or whatever. People don't mine that data, and I wish that they did.
Yeah.
Because it's all there. I was told from a CISO one time when I was explaining safe mode, our ransomware protection, she's like, "That's great, Mike. I love it. You can give me a safe. I need a burglar alarm."
Yeah.
That's what I also need that. So,
Mhm.
and it's like the data's there. It's an
Yeah.
audit trail.
It's there.
Just look for it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can find it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that would be a good pivot point to kind of bring it back into like what businesses are looking at, what we're actually talking about
Yeah,
here when we talk about
sure.
observability. So yes, Pure One does a fantastic job of correlating log structures.
Mhm.
What's even cooler about that is that with the latest log center inside of Pure One, we can actually tap into the API structure within Pure One, and we can set up open telemetry output from that log center back into our centralized point of truth, whatever our observability platform is going to be,
Mhm.
right? Pure is standardizing around open telemetry for that exact reason. How do we get to an even playing field?
Yeah.
How do we make this more approachable? How do we allow you to do what you want to do with your data in your observability platform, right? Not just Pure One, not just ours. So having that open telemetry pipeline out from Pure One for centralized logging of what I would call like an admin event log on the arrays.
Yeah.
And then the exact same open telemetry platform running within FlashArray and FlashBlade as we move into the future is going to make that entire process seamless, whether we want to pull from Pure One or whether we want to pull directly from the box,
Doesn't
right? It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So for those of us who are listening or watching this and you're not a Pure Storage customer already, let me just set this up real quick. Open Telemetry or Open Metrics is what we're currently using today. Open Metrics is a really cool topology, but it is push based. And it's actually using our API structure to pull all of that observability data out of the systems. That's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift on the box. It's a heavy lift on your systems. We're moving to Open Telemetry, which is a push methodology. So we're going to deliver this data to your observability platform versus your observability platform having to call to us and say, give us this. This means that we go from point in time structures at intervals to basically streaming
This is
data.
getting to your real time thing that you talked about,
Correct.
right? Where it's just like everybody wants that as close to real time as possible.
Correct.
And-
So we're able to deliver these flows in a very real time way. We're driving value back into the business. We're pushing for standardization and centralization. And that allows you to use this data in brand new ways. So let's take a cyber approach to this for 2 seconds. Think about the direction that that's going, right? I can't prevent what I can't see. Right. If I can't prevent what I can't see, then I need to be able to see everything. I have automation platforms. I have XDR. I have intelligent scanning of these log structures, of these metrics that are coming in that allow me to do heuristic observation of my entire platform, of my entire application set. I can show what deviation from norm is. I can take proactive action when I'm building this visibility structure that we're talking about.
You get very close to real time, if not real time on anomaly detection, right? Which is super cool. So when you described this, does the light bulb go on for customers too to solve some of these
I think so.
complex challenges?
Yeah.
I mean, you're both super enthusiastic about this topic, which I love, right? But that kind of solution is sort of an aha moment, I think, for
I think so.
people that are trying to figure out how to do this better.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, then what are the other hallmarks of what we do? I think you touched on some of them, right? Because we've always been open and API first. So what you're describing now about that push rather than that pull into the OTel framework, right? Aligns with that. What about other native integrations? I think, Mike, you were going to hit on those, and you touched on it a little bit with Splunk and like we're connected to all these different tools.
Yeah, we have a lot of integrations we've built with partners out there to just make it where whatever you want to use, whether it's Splunk, like you said, or we got tools for VMware and all kinds of different things. We've always been really passionate about just like, let's just make the data available.
Yeah.
You know, the open telemetry movement is a really good example of that, where it's like, whatever it is that you might want to use, you know, let's just make this either, if an integration doesn't exist already, it's going to be easy to build because everything we do is API first. And let's just make it as easy for you to consume the data. We're not going to maybe necessarily tell you what is or isn't important about the data. Let's just give it all to you in a really easy way. And then you just build what makes sense to you. So there's a ton of integration out there that you can leverage with third-party products. But I think the move for observability specifically with open telemetry and open metrics, I think is huge.
Yeah. It's a big move and probably under promoted. I'll promote here, but code.purestorage.com is one of those good places. Where you can, and not just related to observability, but integrations in general. But we maintain that site and actually just got a nice little cosmetic refresh.
It did.
And also we host the code group in the Pure community at purecommunity.purestorage.com, where you can go and look at past code related discussions, but also add your new discussions into the forum or questions that you have out there. So that's a very good plug.
It's a good place for customers to share.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another good one. Like, here's something I did, because customers love learning from other customers to improve how they operate. Certainly a good thing. We do this with all of our products. Yeah. I mean, this is across the board.
Oh,
Yep. There's one widget that rules them all. It's just like, hey, you invested in Pure. We can get telemetry regardless of what you're using.
Yeah, and I think really that's the journey that Pure's on right now, right? The move to open telemetry from something like OpenMetrics, which we've used historically, signifies that shift to more of a cloud-like model, a cloud-like architecture.
Mhm.
When we talk about the enterprise data cloud, right? When we talk about something like Fusion,
Yeah.
all of this becomes part and parcel, right? It's not just supposed to feel like cloud. It's literally supposed to function like cloud too. So standardizing on open telemetry across our entire product base and across things like Portworx allows us to integrate better, right? Allows us to become part of that observability stack that you're looking at from a global business viewpoint versus just storage
Yeah.
or just a replacement or just a thing, a widget.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a much deeper integration that can be obtained, and we're really feeding the need from a business perspective.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had a bell because he said enterprise data cloud.
Yeah, somebody rang it.
Yes,
Yeah.
love it. And also that it's a move towards us being a platform company,
For
not
sure.
just storage.
Yeah.
You know,
Ring the bell.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. They go
Marketing.
they go hand in hand. They go part and parcel.
Yeah.
They matter, right? It gives us some framing around which to have. Like, I've yet to have a conversation with someone either in a podcast or with a customer or at an event where enterprise data cloud and that vision, that strategy, like, it doesn't apply. It applies.
Yeah.
It applies everywhere. And then you have to have this foundational layer of a platform underlying that delivers whatever is needed for the solution.
Yeah. And it's hard to build that on a platform if, like, say tomorrow we decided, you know what, there's a new FlashArray 2.0. And now we want everybody to buy the new FlashArray 2.0, but guess what? Sorry, it's got different APIs.
Yeah.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna have to rewrite all the observability stuff you've been doing and automation. You can't build a data cloud on that.
No.
Yeah.
It's got to have that compatibility.
Mhm.
I love it. Thank you, gentlemen. This was super, super cool. I know we had a thing on the dark side option that because their customers are raising their hand and going, well, I have a sensitive environment, but that's something we've always supported, right? Relative to telemetry data. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, but I think this turns that key a little bit further, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Historically, right, you've had to set up an API structure. You're querying each device within your fleet. Let's just say DarkSide, right? And you're doing all of this because you don't have the built-in benefits of feeding everything back into Pure One. Cool. Now I can standardize everything on top of OpenTelemetry. I can get streaming data from all of my endpoints. I can keep all of that isolated in my dark network or in my dark site.
Okay.
I'm not relying on an outside resource, and I have deeper visibility across my Pure Storage estate with no external access needed.
Still self-contained.
Still self-contained.
Yeah.
Right? That's huge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So better access, better visibility from a Pure Storage perspective, but also into the global ecosystem, right? Because that's really where we want to be.
Yeah.
It's not about just storage. Storage is a pillar of what we're building and what we're defining. So how are we integrating upstack? How are we integrating left to right to make sure that we're part of the ecosystem, we're part of the solution, and we're not a thorn in anybody's side?
Yes, and not
Yes, and
not
yes.
this or that's
Both,
right.
all.
And the dark sites, I think, is really relevant too, because we talked about the real time versus the look back.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get with the cloud stuff. So for the dark sites, they're going to care even more about getting that real time data. What is actually happening right now? So what we're doing with like open telemetry is even more important for them.
Super excited. Good ad. I'm glad we hit on that. I'm going to take you guys into the hot take segment. You ready for that?
Okay, let's go.
We'll dive in because we're going to get some good, fun stories out of this. We'll start first, though, and maybe related to observability, but it doesn't have to be just because you talk to so many people and you cover so many technologies. Sass, I've had you go second most, so I'll have you go first on this one. Pressure, you get time to think.
Good.
What's a trend or a capability, maybe related to observability or not, that you think leaders or IT folks are overlooking right now? What's something that you kind of see when you go talk to customers? You're like, oh, you guys aren't paying attention enough to that.
Yeah, I think the overlooking piece. I mean, automation just keeps coming up over
Does
and
it?
over again.
Yeah.
I mean, because that too is a thing. Like we talked about, like just like observability. You've got one area of a company that's doing one kind of automation, another one's doing another one's doing another. And I think that kind of is where the enterprise data cloud thing that we're talking about resonates so much,
Yeah.
because it's like if we can just be part of something larger that you're doing, and maybe the easiest part of what it is that you're doing because of things like Fusion,
Perhaps. Yeah.
right? Then you also need some context across all this different automation stuff that you're doing too. If everything's so segmented, where storage is automating in one way, networking in a different way, maybe you've got a ticketing system that's different for one group and a different ticketing system for a different group, and all this different stuff. I think that, just like with the observability, is getting overlooked sometimes, is that you've got to have all of that needs to be central and common amongst all the different parts of the business, whether it's IT and even outside of IT. So that's why Fusion, I love to share about Fusion.
Sure.
Because it's
Yeah.
let's
Holistic.
part of
right?
what, let's be
Holistic
part of
view.
your journey and help you build this platform.
Yeah. We used to have multiple ticketing systems here, and it kind of drove like we fixed that. Something that we fixed since I've been here a long time, but it was like, oh wait, I got this problem. Which
Where do I sit here? Yeah, right.
Oh, which one do I put it in where I'm actually going to get somebody to respond and help me fix something, right? I didn't know. Now, it's very simple the way we do things. Do you have one? Is it automation, holistic automation as well, or
So
you
no,
want to go off the board?
I'm going
off
the board.
All right.
Yeah,
I
I'm
it.
going into the deep end. So here's the thing that I've noticed a lot, right? Every customer that I talk to has a cloud journey
Okay.
that they're trying to take.
Okay.
And when you ask them why, it's usually the same set of things. My local infrastructure can't deliver the flexibility or the scalability that I'm looking for. I don't want people doing busy work within my data centers. I don't want people monitoring platforms. I want people producing results.
Mhm.
So I'm offloading that element of it to typically a public cloud. What if you could have your cake and eat it too,
Mhm.
right? Where we're headed, the direction that we're going, is something that is super relevant, I think, to every business. And that is time to value. I want the flexibility. I want the security. I want the uptime and availability that my local instance or that my on-premises infrastructure gives me. But I want all of the automation. I want all of the tool sets. I want all of the track record of delivering value quickly that the cloud gives me.
Mhm.
Right? What we're seeing right now at Pure Storage, and I think other areas in the market, is this evolution of private cloud where it's not what it used to be, right? It's not this Nimbus idea that you could have a private cloud. It is a set of tooling and concepts that deliver a private cloud to customers that give them all of the things, or at least most of the things, that they need from the public cloud while allowing them to maintain ownership and infrastructure that they run, that they support.
It's more than just a baseline service catalog. It actually provides a cloud-like experience, but in a private, like it's everything. It's what private cloud wanted to be when it grew up. 100 kind of where we are, right? Because I ran private cloud 10, 15 years. I mean, we used to have that as a solution entry point here at Pure that we sold, and it was just a fancy way of saying VMs. To VMs and data centers, and it used to just be like, well, we have a service catalog. Somebody came in and requested a database instance, and it requires this much storage and this much compute, and away you go.
Right.
But then you didn't really have control over it then. They were just these chunky building blocks. Now you have that flexibility.
Yes.
Right.
And if you look at things like OpenTelemetry that we're integrating into the platform, if you look at things like Fusion, if you look at what we're doing with presets and with automation, we're giving you the tool set that you need to make that your reality future state. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that's being overlooked. And I think you're going to see a continuation of what we've seen in the past. I move my entire application structure. I move all of my business value into cloud, and I either have rampant runaway costs that make it too expensive to
Yeah.
continue, or I run into technical roadblocks that block sets of my applications, that block sets of my infrastructure from actually obtaining that future vision.
Mhm.
What if there was a better way? So that's what I think I'm excited about. And that's what I think people need to be paying attention
Oh,
to.
totally. Yeah, and the other thing too is going way back to what we talked about in the beginning about trying to find actionable business outcomes from all this observability data, things that happen in the cloud. It's kind of cliche, it gets talked about a lot, but helping IT get a little closer to profit and loss.
Yeah.
Because, going back to like what I talked about at that payment system, what we've been talking about with the observability, if you as an IT professional can actually show things around here's what's happening in regards to automation, how much quicker things can get deployed. I helped enable that.
Mhm.
If you look at some of the barriers that used to be there to help get us to revenue faster, I broke down those barriers, and I can show you now how we can deliver faster time to revenue, or a process that used to take this to this, and like we can correlate that to dollars.
Yeah.
That matters. That gets you noticed.
Yeah, it
in
does.
IT.
Partnering with the business, but also, again, abstracting some of the wrenching and things that used to have to go on,
Yeah.
which creates that perception that IT is just, putting stuff into a rack and doing things, or, where's my services? And now it's like, oh, IT understands my business. They understand what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to generate,
Yeah.
and they're providing services. I don't care about the underlying stuff. That's up to them.
Yeah.
But they're providing me some benefit and value that moves things forward. And
Totally.
IT becomes a part of the P&L conversation, which is super cool.
Right.
Yeah.
What's something that people hate spending money on with their cars, like
Yeah.
their tune-ups, all the maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine if you went into the auto body or to your mechanic, right? And one of the first things he did is a baseline on like, here's what you're getting for miles per gallon at 55 miles per hour right now. Here's what, this. And then at the end of the tune-up, now I measured a 6.7% increase in miles per gallon. That's stuff that people care about suddenly. And they're like, yeah, I should be taking
Yeah.
my car in for a
Yeah.
tune-up. That's showing the value versus just, the pure metrics like
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what observability bridges the gap on.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, we'll hit another one with you guys, both as practitioners. Everybody has a story, something you screwed up, or somebody on your team screwed something up.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I can go. I've got one.
You got one? You got a good one?
I had when I was a consultant years ago on the
Yeah.
partner side, and I was deploying a system that was unified, but it really had a separate thing for NAS and a separate thing for Block, two completely different hardware platforms. And I remember going in and setting this up for a customer, and this was, over 15 years ago. And I said, everything was Block. They wanted to do Block storage. I said, well, it can do NFS too. Let me show you. So I had to create like LUNs and then like stripe a file system across them and all this different stuff. And they moved over a couple of VMs. I'm like, look how easy it is to grow it. I'll just add a couple more LUNs. You can extend the file system. Okay, we're all done with this. Well, I'd accidentally then went in and deleted one of the volumes that made up the file system. Oops. Luckily they were not important VMs.
Okay.
I'd recovered
All right.
from
Yeah.
backups.
Yeah.
But the reason that story always sticks out to me is that the next day I was like, well, I'm going to do something nice to these guys. I got to make this up to them. So I lived in a little Czech town in Minnesota, and there was a Czech bakery. So I brought in one day, I said, I brought you guys some donuts. I'm really sorry about what happened yesterday. And they're like, oh, cool. Like I said, these are special Czech donuts. What do you mean? Like, these are special Czech 0-calorie donuts. They're like, 0 calories? Yeah, have some, enjoy. And we're all laughing about it, whatever. At lunchtime, one of the guys left, and I saw on his screen he had been Googling Czech 0-calorie donuts.
That's pretty good.
So good. That's terrific. Did you catch up with one?
Yeah, no, I think I got one for you. So part of my customer side, I did a lot of application deployment and a lot of application automation. So this was earlier on in my sysad life cycle, and I was basically writing deployment scripts that were then deployed remotely throughout the hospital system. And and I forgot to comment out a reboot in one of them and managed to deploy a new piece of software over a lunch hour and in the same time forcibly reboot every single
Everything.
PC that was connected to
The entire hospital.
in the entire so if it was a user desktop, it got rebooted that day forcefully at 12:15.
Without anybody knowing.
It's like literally there was
Yeah.
not, it was like literally you're working and all of a sudden the computer just
Uh-huh. That's
so
pressure though, writing scripts that get
it's a lot.
pushed to everything.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a
So
pressure.
that was the day that junior sysadmin Matthew Badnar learned that you always do deployment testing in non-prod.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing something that you've done 100,000
Much smaller blast radius.
much smaller bad. Yeah, right. Step it into production, don't just
That's
deploy to prod.
That's right.
Yep.
But yeah.
Okay.
At least it wasn't DNS, right?
Did it at least get the Windows updates out of the way with the reboot?
It did actually, yeah.
Oh,
You
Well, at least something good.
all the weighing updates were up to date.
win. Then you'd have to follow up on those. That's perfect. Yeah, because nobody does those on their own. So if you reboot, they're going to happen.
On the bright side, we're now Windows Update compliant.
Yes. Yes. Two birds, one stone.
There you go.
Two birds, one reboot. Right.
Oh.
Last real quick, just a quick hit, like 15, 30 seconds. Go back to your earlier self, right? Go back 20, 25 years. I don't know how long. That's about right. Early self, what do you wish you knew? Or what would you have told yourself about where you are today? Or what you,
I mean,
or that you wish you knew, or what you would learn? Like,
well, besides the obvious, like invest in this stock or
for sure. Yeah, no, those don't count. I had to caveat those.
I think I would have encouraged myself to get more involved in speaking stuff more often, getting
Yeah.
more involved in the community. I
like
think,
that.
whether it was VMware user groups or whatever it might be. Just because when I started out, I was very much like I was the IT guy in the cubicle, like leave me alone. I'm,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. It's like that community. There's so many amazing people in our community and so many people you can meet and make connections with and learn from. I wish I'd gotten involved in that sooner.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, put yourself out there a little
Yeah.
bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think mine actually follows a similar line to you. I don't think early on in my career I recognized the value of sharing information. Does that make sense?
It does.
It
does.
I grew up in the blog era, right? Everybody and their mother had an IT blog.
Yeah.
And I always thought, oh, there's plenty of contributors out there. I don't need to make my voice heard in this path. And I really wish that I had done video or blogging sooner in my career.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess to any of those out there that are just getting started in this biz, don't be hesitant to share your information because you never know.
You never know who will Google something and you just save them a whole bunch of troubleshooting.
Right.
Right.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's what we're driving with the Pure community right now as well. Absolutely. Same kind of concept. And in general, for my 3 decades of being in and around IT
Mm-hmm.
as of, well, around this month, IT people generally like helping IT people. And it doesn't even matter if there's competitive aspects as well too, because I've seen people at competitors of companies I've been with still collaborate on solving problems, like doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Doing the right thing to help people, but also, for people listening, watching, there's a lot of us out here that are experienced who are willing to help you if you're just getting started or you're 5 or 10 years into your career and you're trying to figure out where to go or what to do, like which direction to take. Like I love helping people with those conversations. I love hearing what they're thinking. And, my advice isn't always a winner, but it's some piece of advice that we can give them. And I find people are much more generous with helping others than not. So that's cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's cool. I love it. Do we have fun, gentlemen?
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's a good time. We got observability out in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Finally, as largely your passion project, but
Yeah.
sass you on it
It
as well.
deserves to be out there. Yeah.
It
I
does.
do my best.
It does. Oh, I appreciate it, guys. Super good. Is there a good place to go learn more about what Pure is doing in this space? To your point about sharing more and blogging, have you guys been writing things about this, or where people can read a bit more? There is a blog on blog.purestorage.com.
Yep.
People can find that our advanced services team put on observability. I found that very informational in helping craft our conversation. But what else is in there? Where can people go learn in general?
And we're So first off, Pure Storage community, I'm going to say it again.
Yeah.
Got some great stuff there. Also Pure Storage, our actual professional blogging site. There's going to be more coming out around open telemetry and how we're building that into the application shortly. And you can find me mostly on LinkedIn, I think, where I do most of my communication.
Yeah, you guys are both very good there. Yeah.
Yeah. And communicate with other people in the IT community, talk to people that maybe use Pure Storage and are using observability stuff and see what it is that they're actually getting for outcomes out of it. That's a really good place to start too.
That's awesome. Thanks, gents. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
This was meaty and fun.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I love getting challenged by topics that I don't have a lot of expertise in. It forces me to go off and do a little bit of investment, which is kind of the main reason I started this thing in the first place. Because I didn't know anything about storage. Awesome. And you guys know a ton about storage. Thank you for spending the time. Great to have both of you on here. Connect with these gentlemen on LinkedIn and frankly, anybody on the Principal Technologist and our Field Solution Architect team. Thank you out there for watching and listening to this episode. We appreciate you. Share it with a friend, share it with a colleague, and we'll keep the great guests like Mike and Matt coming on to the program. With that, we will wrap for Pure Storage. For Michael Sass, for Matthew Bednar, this is Rob Ludeman saying, don't look back. Something might be gaining on you.